Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I guess I should first introduce myself. I haven't just decided on a name yet, so I'll just be a nameless terrorist for now. And in this video, I'll be talking about the picture that Mob Games just released as the beginning of the new ARG. As you know, the ARG has been cancelled and it was a script idea for chapter 1. However, I believe the picture still gives us some information about the in-game information in Playtime universe. So in this video, I'll be analyzing the picture as an in-game references, not the ARG information. So let's get started. Okay, first of all, what I mean by in-game reference is that not the ARG, like what the information is given to solve the ARG, but otherwise, like how the computer relates to the Puppy Playtime universe, the gas in the background, and the folders at the Windows page. At this point, I believe everyone is pretty familiar with the theory that the time, the hour and the minutes given at the bottom of the picture is actually the date, July 19th, and the developers will give us some important information like a trailer or a teaser for chapter 3 or maybe the beginning of the new ARG. But since the ARG idea is scrapped, I believe the date is at this point unimportant. So I won't be talking about this that much, and we'll talk about the next point now. The first thing that we took notice of in the desktop is the owner of the computer have access to the CCTV networks, and I believe not every employee in the Playtime factory has access to this, so in-game we can conclude that the owner of the computer is a upper employee, like maybe someone from the security office or an upper worker like late Pierre, head of security, maybe. And as an addition, at the bottom we see another file named command prompt. This is pretty familiar, and in the Playtime CCTV website we see an empty file that we can command, but it's not interactable right now. It may be related to this, like maybe the owner of the computer has access to the website, the pictures and recordings that we see on the website, and the employee maybe has access to them, or maybe it's just a stretch, I don't know. The next thing we do is to brighten up the picture as everyone has done before, and the first thing we notice of is a giant tree at the corner. Now the developer said that the ARG was not for chapter 3 but rather for the update of the chapter 1, so we get that this tree does not mean the tree of chapter 3. However, another interesting thing is that at the end of this ARG, to get the password for the files at the computer, we replace E's with trees at the Seeing Eyes page, as everyone done before. And first of all, this is a tree, so maybe we have to do a reverse engineering and replace this tree with an E. And whose name starts with E? Elliot Ludwig. And since this ARG was supposed to be for the update of the chapter 1, we get to look at the chapter 1 updates, like what's new and what's not. When the Huggy chase scene happens, we see a lot of paintings on the walls. Some of them are warnings, some of them are just random gibberish, we cannot read them. And some of them read Elliot, simply the word Elliot. And some of them were not there, and a new Elliot wordings have been added to many places in the vent system. So maybe this was related to this, maybe this tree was supposed to represent the E of Elliot. And another interesting thing that I haven't seen anyone point before is the giant face that's looking at us at the same corner. We see the tree. It looks like the top of the head of a person, maybe a bald person, but I don't know. And we see the two eyes. Like this is interesting because in the during the process of ARG we see a lot of things related to ice, like some of the passwords are seeing ice, and the photo at the file has a lot of sea ice, and the rendered picture of the one that's released. So could this be a face related to seeing ice everywhere? Maybe this is a face of an opera employee, someone related to the experiments like Harley Sawyer, or it's not a face, or I don't know, maybe it's a face, but it's someone who's been experimented on, like, because the face kind of seems scary, but it also looks like heavily dysmorphed. The top of the head also looks like it's been injured, and if it is actually a face and I'm not stretching, the eyes actually look manic. Like, it actually looks like it's been spying on the viewer, and it looks really scary. Maybe this was meant to be added to chapter 1, or maybe it's related to a character like Experiment 1006, as we will see in chapter 3. I don't know. But I think it looks like a face. Like, what do you think? And the last thing about the Brighton picture is the face at the opposite corner. I've seen many people believe that this is Huggy Wuggy, but I don't really think so, because there are some empty corners at the sides of the what's supposed to be the mouth, and the head doesn't look like that pointy, I guess. However, considering the Bunzo Bunny comic, I believe this is the face of a bird, more likely a vulture, as everyone points out. And after spending a ridiculous amount of time researching on different types and breeds of vultures and their eating and breeding habits, I found one that's actually quite similar to what we see in the Bunzo Bunny comic and in this picture. Okay, first of all, in the page it says that the king vulture lacks a voice box, although it makes some voices when they feel threatened. And I don't remember when, but at some place the developers said that the chapter 3 will be based on voice more than chapter 1 and 2. So I believe this might be an important clue for us to determine when will the creatures will attack or not. The bill snapping voice the page mentions might actually be important in this context. Secondly, it is mentioned that the king vultures generally lay a single unmarked white egg in its nest in a hollow tree. And, more importantly, to ward off potential predators, the vultures keep their nest foul smelling. It actually sounds quite familiar, considering how the Bunzo Bunny toy found the nest by smelling. As an addition, it is mentioned that the offspring is able to peck by their third day, which is actually quite close to the day they hatch, and the Bunzo Bunny toy falls down the hole and remains there for around 30 days, as we assume. And we know that due to some accidents caused by the grab pack mechanic, the egg hatched way earlier than it was supposed to be. It was premature. So maybe not the toy itself or the parent itself or another toy didn't attack the bunny, but the creature, the vulture that grew during this time started eating it because it couldn't fly, but there was a dying carcass right next to it, so it started eating it in order to stay alive and grow. And actually, when we consider the pictures, we see that the bird, and as I assume the baby king vulture, moved around sometime at the 15th day. Like, we see that there is a giant slimy mess over there, and The next picture we see that it says moved, and in the rendered picture at the end of the comics we see that first of all the small tissues were moved out, and this is actually known to be a sign trait of vultures. And then when we look at the feeding habits, it is mentioned that king vultures are known to make the initial cut, which means they are the first of the scavengers to eat a dead animal. And there are many types of vultures. Like I learned this a lot while researching for the recent few days. There are some who eat what other vultures left behind. There are some that eat only the bones. There are some eats that only the skin. And the king vultures are known to first approach the dead or already dying animal and eat their soft tissue, which is actually interesting because we know that Bunzo Bunny hadn't died for the first few days. It was asking for help, so maybe it was already dying and like an open meal for the baby there. Lastly, we see that king vultures were portrayed as a god with human body and a bird head in some cultures at the past, and according to Maya mythology, this god carried messages between humans and other gods. Now, considering what Elliot Ludwig believed about the mythology and the origins of the poppy flower, we see him mentioning that it was believed to carry some unnatural properties, so maybe he had some interest in other mythological creatures and their meanings too. Considering all of this made me believe that the hand of the presumably prototype we see at the end of chapter 2 was actually a part of a bird-like creature. Like maybe the claw we assume is part of the experiment 1006 is actually the claw of a giant vulture-like creature who is the experiment 1006. They are in fact one and the same person, being, creature. And if that is true, what is its purpose? I don't know for now. We'll talk about it later, probably.